Okay, so I'm going to follow up a video that Conference Report has posted up over at the UDoubled site called Performing Books and Watching Videos. And I really appreciate him shooting that video, partly because I was sort of surprised that more people weren't interested in following up that discussion or debate about some of the distinctions between video watching and book reading, and in particular this distinction that I was trying to offer between a self-paced technology and an auto-paced technology. So a couple of things that Fred had pointed out in the video, and you have to check out that video. Please go to his site on UDoubled. I will put a link, and check out the UDoubled site. I would hope that people would maybe try to shoot some more videos up over there. But he was talking about shrinking attention span, and I did mention that, and that was probably what I was talking about. And then Fred moves into this discussion of, I guess, temporal control and the way that a text provides a set of instructions for making sounds. It's almost like a musical score in which one performs the text. And as much as I think that that's right, that's correct. And I mean, there's a lot of different ways to think about text. Some people think that writing is a representation of speech. Other people say, no, 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 that's a wrong way to look at it. A much more sophisticated or appropriate way is to say that writing presents a model which we use to interrogate and make, I guess, that we use to interrogate our own speech and sort of make certain aspects of it consciously present to us. That is, we bring into conscious awareness certain aspects of speech by using the model that the writing system provides. Okay, and so it's more than just a score for performance. And I say that because I think even to those two that we just mentioned, there's one group that wants to say writing is a representation of speech, another group that wants to say no, writing presents a model through which we come to interrogate and understand our speech. But there's a third group that says no, you don't even want to see the speech-writing comparison that way. You want to see the degree to which writing transforms consciousness in the way that one opens to the simultaneity of ideas through the properties, the physical properties of a book. See, I think there are people who are so arrogant that they think that if something is new, it's somehow better. Everyone wants to believe that if it's new, it's better, and they want to think that books, something that were designed back in the 1500s, 1600s, and sort of really came to pass with modern senses, not even until the 20th century, they imagine, though, that these electronic books and ebooks are somehow superior because they're later. And it's such a problem because books really are, they are the culmination of thousands of years worth of bodily phenomenological grounding in what it is. For a long time, there was writing on stone and then vellum and parchment and scrolls, and they were unwieldy in different sizes and very hard to catalog. And once you had standardization of paper, I mean, paper science is very new, very modern, and sort of modern paper science facilitated the modern book that we know, the 20th century book is, or we'll even call it, the late 19th century, 20th century book phenomenon, book culture. It's a very, very sophisticated technology. It allows one to have a schematic with figures and graphs and tables that allow for simultaneity of ideas, and you can page back and forth. I can have a diagram, have a couple of paragraphs that set up to the diagram, and you can be looking back and forth at the diagram while you're reading it, and then you can hold multiple pages open with your fingers and be back scanning back and forth. You're highlighting things going back and forth. It's really, really difficult to do that in a video. Now, I've even seen, there's some recent science videos that are on, that I've really enjoyed some of these channels. There's a couple of recent science channels, Physics in a Minute and this kind of stuff, that these quick videos or these biology videos, and they're trying to make up for this problem, but it's so evident, and I'll post a link to one of those videos, but it's so evident the difficulty that video has in back scanning, in giving the reader the liberty to move forward or backward in time and to appropriate the flow of time in ways that are, how do I say, I guess most potent for their own learning needs at that moment, something like that. Okay, so I want to get to it even more and see if here was the issue that I was trying to get at, Fred. I mean, this is what I was trying to talk about is, and part of this is it's a lot of work that I have been doing about new media and the difference between book culture, literacy, new media, social networking, all this kind of stuff. Okay, so part of the argument is that study offers a kind of solitude which then makes for solidarity in community. Again, study is a kind of solitude that makes for solidarity in community. So there seems to be a circuit in book culture where one is part of a community, but then reading is a moment of solitude. It's a time away from the collective, and it allows for a deepening of oneself, a deepening of one's character, a quiet, reflective time. It really is very personal. It's very reflective, and it's an over against and a relief of the community to deepen oneself, so that when one returns to the community, there is an increased solidarity, but it's not just more of the same. It's a kind of solidarity that comes from growing in inwardness through study. And even that, the community and the way that publics were formed by individuals reading, forming public communities is very different than tribal life. I mean, tribal life, it depends upon the depiction of the tribal life, but warring tribes and this kind of disarray and the notion of quiet, alone, reflective reading is just very different than tribal life. I guess try it simply that way. That reading in solitude are a kind of resource for growing in relationship to community that one is in, and where community is already in the backdrop. The YouTube experience, the Facebook experience, the MySpace, all this kind of stuff, my experience with it has not been that favorable to me. I mean, other than some of these videos with like you, Fred, or some other people on the tubes, I mean, there have been people who I've enjoyed, and it's the close to being in an interaction like this that's asynchronous. I find the dialogue on Skype to be closer to a sense of community, but it's even that it's not really there. But it's sort of like this: YouTube and Facebook, MySpace, these seem more like they're not moments of individual solitude in a respite from community obligations and the communal hub and flow. No, instead, it's a search for community. It's like these social networking sites and this kind of, I guess, these kinds of interactions that we're having here on YouTube. They don't feel like they're a relief from community. They seem like they're a searching for community, they're a quest for community, they're trying to develop community, and they're overshot. They're just caught through with, I guess, counter motives, surreptitious motives that, they're sort of lurking in the backdrop. It's self-interest, and it's this kind of nodal stuff, and because it's all asynchronous, it just doesn't feel like community at all. I think it leaves everyone sort of hanging without anyone really getting together and being there. It's kind of like you're in a room and there's a bunch of uninvited house guests who won't leave, and you're going to have to form a company or a community out of just company. And company is a good word. It's sort of like increasingly the world is just a bunch of company. There's no community, but there's a bunch of company. And company are just people who are hanging around at some event where no one really, there's company there, but company has corporate sort of overtones. That is, there's a company. And I think in some way, YouTube is like everyone, because it's all asynchronous, because like you're right now watching a recording, and I'm talking to you knowing that you're not really listening to me, you're listening as it's going to be heard, but I can't watch you in the interaction and then change what I'm going to say as I'm saying it. I'm caught somehow speaking like I'm putting a message in a bottle, knowing that you're going to receive it at a later time. And to that extent, this is asynchronous. It's very isolating. It kind of feels like an inhuman prison, and it's like a temporary, I'm sorry, it's a temporality-based solitary confinement. I think the more that people are caught in a kind of just media at all points, which is always flowing at someone else's speed, tempo, rate, that becomes its own kind of estrangement and alienation. So let me see, I'm going to pull back and give the sort of larger framework that I was really trying to give when I was talking about the difference between self-paced and auto-paced technologies. Okay, now look, I'm already feeling bad. I'm going over 10 minutes. I don't know how this got into be this, but okay, so I think the thing to back up and you say, okay, so what is the most liberating and free experience that there is of consciousness? I think the first and primary consciousness is just consciousness unfettered, imagination flowing, no real concern, I guess, between self and other, maybe just oneself in a room with thought just wandering about as it does. There it is, thought just with no concern, moving at its own pace and rate, however, untechnologically mediated, perhaps outside, whatever that is. Then the next most unfettered would be a person alone using, now okay, now let's, maybe it could be, we could do a collective, maybe it's collective thought but with no words, no one talking. If it's all just people together and we're, you know, just having a group experience, to say music's going on in the backdrop, but the music going on in the backdrop just allows each of us to kind of ebb and flow in and out of the experience at our own tempo and rate, even attending to different aspects of the music that allow us to incorporate it at our own experience to some degree. When you start to get to information, though, like articulate thought made through language, where you have to pay attention to what another is saying and follow the other's consciousness and, you know, attend to it, there, face-to-face interaction is actually more imprisoning than reading. Because reading, when I'm alone, I can sit and I can backscan, I can read, I can skim really quickly. I mean, especially if you're a competent reader, you can read really quickly, you can backscan, you can highlight. If you're a very unskilled reader, an unpracticed reader, you haven't devoted time to it, there it may be hard for you to take advantage of some of the real virtues that, you know, the book has. Okay, but so we go to this. So there's sort of consciousness with its collective or individual, just unfettered stream of thought doing what it's doing. And then you have something like the individual reading is the next most free. And then people talking with each other is perhaps pretty free. You have to listen to what another says, and you have to sort of follow along. And if you drop out, you can miss the conversation. You end up doing this Mr. Roper effect. I don't know if you're familiar with that. There's a sitcom from the U.S., Three's Company, right? When people take things out of context, all of a sudden they blow things out of proportion because they missed something. And once you get to recorded technologies, okay, so as soon as you move to recorded technologies, especially the informational kind, now not music, because I think music has enough rhyme and rhythm and repetition, and you don't have to, like, if you missed a piece, you don't have to go, oh, stop it here, I missed that last piece of it. Whereas if it's informational content and the thing is going on at a pace independent of you, so radio broadcast, okay, book on tape would be the absolute worst. When you're listening to a book on tape, you're just caught moving to it at its rhythm and its pace, and if you miss something, you have to scan back, scan forward. I mean, the book on tape would be the absolute worst. When you get to video, a video like this is pretty demanding. I'm speaking way too quickly for some people, way too slowly for other people. They don't know how to skim up forward to the parts that they want. There's really no way to scan around there and to make notes, I guess, in any of this. They could try. It's just not nearly as convenient as a book. It's quicker, it's easier for us to conquer distance, but I don't know the extent to which individually it helps a person feel, I guess, not alienated and estranged from being in this constant unmoving pillory, you know. I think sometimes I hear the expression, people say, I want to put my life on pause. I just want to pause everything. And that notion of wanting to pause life, I think so many people, they get up and, I mean, there are people who get up and they turn on the television or they turn on the radio, and it's not just that it's, some music on in the background, some classical music. No, they get up and they have either, talk radio or the news or other things, and their consciousness is moving at a tempo and a rate that is not self-paced. Now, arguably, a lot of this stuff is designed to be at what we're going to call a normal conscious rate, whatever that is. And so there is some limitation. But if you look at what's happened over, say, the last 50 years of broadcasting, I mean, try to look very carefully at the number of camera angles per minute per second now. Like the MTV change in flux and flow of all of the number of splices and the way that the time and tempo rate that people are now in. I think that's part of what it is. I think there's a deep estrangement of experience that comes from having too much of one's experience being mediated by those technologies that are auto-paced, rather than something akin, as close as you can get, to a meditative life where consciousness moves at its own rate. And the book is probably one of the, if not the best, the most superior technology that approximates a meditative state on one's own time and yet still isn't opening to others. I mean, I think that would be really the sticking point. Hey, it's great to see you, and take care. Thanks.